Almost forgot the microphone. Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff. We are going to dive in right away. We have a lot of great things to cover. Crypto crisis, SEC appealing the Ripple case, IMF Bitcoin threats against El Salvador, and all sorts of political clashes going on, creating havoc and turmoil, whether it's the SEC or FEMA or the federal government. It seems like there's just chaos from shore to shore. And we're going to dig in to what all that means. And what kind of impact can that have on you personally, especially with a big election in the United States coming up in about, let's see, it's right around the corner. It is October 5th. It's coming in 30 days. And so we even have some nice commentary from Kamala Harris. We'll play that clip. Don't know what happened. It looks like she had a bit of a meltdown. But we have all sorts of things we have to get into. We want to dive in. We have a great X post from Jeremy Hogan, specifically outlining this notion of the SEC appeal, some of his opinions on that. That's probably the first thing that we're going to dive into. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. I think we need to kick this thing off. So let's go. All right. Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff, and we are going to dive in. Chip will be back with us tomorrow evening as we dive in and workshop some more of these great topics. So let's first start out with this post from Jeremy Hogan. So let me see if we can pull up our screen and share it. Let's make sure we're sharing some audio. Why? Because we've got some videos we have to dig into as well. If you guys have any great commentary, go ahead and throw that in. Make sure you guys give a quick shout out to where you guys are tuning in from. What part of the world? What state? If you're in the U.S., what part of the world are you in? Outside of the U.S., I'd love to hear from where you are tuning in, which will be awesome. And we need to get this thing going here. So, Jeremy Hogan, here we go. Let's talk about Jeremy Hogan. Let's talk about some of Jeremy's insights. Now, he didn't hold back on opinion. So he has 7 key points, initial thoughts on this whole SEC appeal. Now, here's the thing. A lot of the crypto fanboys said the SEC appeal wouldn't happen. I was watching the X feeds, watching a lot of the YouTube feeds. SEC not going to appeal. It just seemed to be like a common thread, a common theme that wasn't going to happen. One of the things that Chip and I talked about was that indeed the appeal would most likely happen, and that the SEC definitely has an issue, and it's their opinion or it's nothing. And the two parties are so far away from one another, even throughout the years of the lawsuit. There was so much commentary on the fact that a settlement was coming. There's going to be a settlement. Of course, there's going to be a settlement. Settlement's going to happen next week. Settlement's going to happen next month. Settlement's going to happen in 2 months. Chip and I were very, very consistent. Not even, you get, these legal brains like Jeremy Hogan can analyze it really well. We looked at all the facts on the ground. We looked at all the legal interpretation of what was going on. And then we just looked at it from a pure political perspective to see how far apart were the two parties. How far was Ripple and the SEC from having any type of meeting of the minds and coming together and being able to reach some sort of a settlement. And it was just quite obvious throughout the whole process that Ripple was very consistent in that they were going to keep pursuing. They weren't going to settle because they had specific points they had to meet. And one of them had to do with the XRP digital asset not being deemed a security. So the fact is that on the other side, the SEC was very specific that they saw the XRP digital asset as a security and it wasn't a settlement point. So how do you take those two opinions, merge them together and reach a settlement? Impossible. So it went to court decision. We obviously know what the outcome was with Judge Torres. We also knew that there was no clear path, regulatory path through Congress because there was so much turmoil going on in Congress over that period of time. And Chip and I have talked a lot about the Token Taxonomy Act and why this whole lawsuit was actually an expedient way of reaching some sort of level of legal clarity. Now, the SEC, though, continued down a path of vendetta. And that's what it really seems to be. It just seems to be a continuous vendetta, by Chair Gensler of the SEC against the crypto space at large, but putting Ripple in the crosshairs mainly because it's one of the larger entities out there within the blockchain crypto space. They have a lot of weight, hence, they go after them. Obviously, we talked not that long ago about Library that did not have deep pockets, and the SEC went after them and took them down. The one thing we know about the SEC is that the SEC is backed by government money that seems to be unlimited when they spend it on lawsuit. But let's see what Jeremy Hogan had to say, thoughts on the SEC appeal. When did this get posted? I think it was just a couple days ago. So here we go. Number one, big mistake by the SEC. It will appeal the programmatic sale ruling, and if it wins, it will get more money from Ripple and have protected no one. And this, at the end of the day, at the basis of what they want to do, it has nothing whatsoever to do with protecting anybody. They don't want to protect retail interest, because if they're protecting retail interest, they would take a completely different approach. And one of the tenets of the SEC right on their website is to protect people, right? Protect individual investments. That is their number one goal, not DEI, not overreaching, not vendetta, not targeting corporations on behalf of a Marxist regime, of an ill-gotten kind of ideology. It has nothing to do with that. It all has to go. It goes back to protecting individual investors. And this is where there's such a departure from reality in terms of Chair Gensler. The actions of the SEC are stepping over a major line. And you have to try to figure out also if the SEC is overstepping their own authority. Have they even overstepped one's individual rights by the fact that it is now a personal vendetta against the space by an individual who, again, we have to figure out the bigger picture. Who are those that are backing him? Who has the most to gain from the toppling of the crypto space, the slowing down of the crypto space, etc. So here, Jeremy Hogan goes on. Ripple will raise its blue sky law issue, and if it wins, the SEC's ability to regulate the entire crypto space is essentially destroyed. Not a good calculation of risk by the SEC. It would make a poor stock trader. So obviously, this isn't all for nothing. And I have a feeling that, and Jeremy Hogan is right, it's not a great calculation because it's an all for nothing. The SEC and Gary Gensler right now, with this vendetta, and it's a blind vendetta, going after Ripple, trying to topple Ripple because at the end of the day, they want to take down all of the crypto space. And so it means a lot more if they can find a way. And to his point, if they can get more money from Ripple and they can appeal the whole programmatic sales ruling, then obviously Ripple loses. Obviously, the crypto space loses. Obviously, all retail investors in blockchain and the technology lose. Obviously, the United States loses. Obviously, companies that are trying to innovate in the U.S. lose because it pushes everything offshore. That's a vendetta. It's a blind vendetta. Now, on the other side of it, if they fail, then they've basically neutered themselves across the board. And maybe there's a higher probability chance that they get neutered. And that's it. And this is again a path to clarity. The question is, exactly what's going to happen over the next steps here. Number two, this is an appeal by right, not like when the SEC tried to appeal before. The trial judge can't reject the appeal. It's moving forward regardless. And so let's say Ripple spent 150 or $200 million so far. The SEC, government tax money, probably spent about the same amount. Maybe they spent 150, 200, 250. We don't know how much money they've spent specifically. I know we can probably look it up. It should be public record. But for the course of the topic, I didn't look up that number, so I don't have it here in front of us. The point being is that they have unlimited resources. They have government resources and can pour as much money into this lawsuit as they want to. And this again is highly problematic because they're going after a company, they're going after an industry, they're going after retail investors. They're not protecting anybody, which is, Jeremy Hogan's point there. Nobody gets protected. Nobody gets helped. Number three, the SEC is very, very likely to lose, both statistically and based on the fact heavy way the judge wrote her opinion. Now, this is going after the programmatic sales. Number four, even if the SEC were to win on appeal, it's very, very likely just a matter of money. Nothing would change as to XRP and its use by Ripple. So, but the question is, what about on retail side? Is it going to have an impact on retail? Does it, and if the SEC were to win, how does this then impact the future of innovation in the US? Because now we have a vengeful SEC that's doing things to manipulate the outcomes in the US of this technology, which would have devastating impact on the US in terms of job growth, in terms of any seat at the table for this innovative class. All while this is going on, keep in mind that in other parts of the world, they're normalizing the crypto space. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that Coinbase recently did in terms of stablecoin over in Europe, because that's relevant. But for right now, just going through this, obviously there's some, big issues. And here's the question also is how much further out does this court case get dragged out? And the fact that they're going through the appeal now, we're obviously going to have another election come up here in 30 days. Higher probability chance that we're going to have a brand new administration going in, meaning a complete departure. We'll go back to Trump for 2024, coming into office 2025. Elon Musk being part of the new government to clean house in government. If they can cut 70-80% of the fat within Washington, as Elon Musk did with X, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because of government bureaucracy. But if we can get to that point, it'll make some, obviously be a major impact. Then maybe we can get back to some normalcy. The problem is this court case is pushing through. So let's continue through this. There was some commentary. Let me go through and bring up some of this commentary as we're talking about it. So we have Jim D. The irony with the SEC appeal is it seems to be directed towards getting SCOTUS involved. More delay, but likely the best for all. I agree with that. Once this goes to Supreme Court level, I believe also that that there'll be some sort of a positive outcome. At least there'll be some very clear paths of functionality, operation. There'll be rules of the road. We'll know exactly how to move forward, continue. For all those developers out there, understanding the dynamics of actually building in this space will be majorly important. Freddy Cat is saying, good morning, Jeff and Hodlers. Your government is not your friend. Just look at what's happening in North Carolina. Exactly. And we're going to talk a little bit about that also. Devastating what's happening up in North Carolina. And then I'm glad you brought that up. But our prayers go out to everybody in North Carolina that is currently uh, suffering as a direct result of the hurricane, the flooding, all these things that went on in North Carolina that I think were unanticipated uh, at this level of devastation, but also to pray that all of these private citizens that are going up there to help will actually be able to get their help through. That they're not going to block. For there was groups of people that dropped off Starlink to help with communication. There's people flying their helicopters in. It was just reported yesterday, and then they threatened him with arrest because he was trying to go and help people, and then pick his son back up. And there's just one thing after another. What we're witnessing under this current administration is utter chaos. And so, but we'll talk about that later. But let's get more into this one here. So number 4, in a couple weeks, we'll know what issue or issues the SEC is appealing, and then it must file its first brief by mid-December. It will not and cannot be appealing the XRP is not a security. Importantly, watch for whether the SEC is appealing the injunction. This is a really good point because that's already removed from the appeal for what they're going after. So I think that's obviously a good good sign and good commentary from Jeremy Hogan on that, and I like that. It will not and cannot be appealing the XRP is not a security. So let's get over that part of it. A ruling from the appellate court won't happen until late 2025, early 2026. I posted it would take until the summer of 25 a couple months ago. I was wrong about that. Sorry. Now, another elongated court case, more tie up, more chance that, and here again, you have Ripple as a corporation. All the other companies are looking at Ripple. It's such a critical lawsuit to watch because of the fact that it doesn't just impact one blockchain, it impacts all of them. It impacts how other companies will build or not build or expand or not expand in the US at this point, mainly because of what they're seeing under the current SEC. And all of that could change. You bring in a new administration. If Gary Gensler is forced out, he resigns. They replace him with a new chair. And I believe we have to look it up. Someone out there must know. I think he's there through the end of 2025 or, I think up to 2026. I believe that's the case that he served, that he has his term period. So they'd really have to force him out and then replace him with somebody else that would be more friendly and trying to help develop exactly what's going on here. But if we have this court case dragging out, it's going to have, not to say this lightly, but it's going to have a ripple effect across the industry in terms of what is able to be done from a development perspective because of, again, of the tie-up. Okay, XRP is not a security, but they're going after Ripple, that it could have other impact on the industry. We don't know. We don't know, have clear regulatory roads. It's an unknown variable. The one thing that Gary Gensler always stuck with is that everything was clear, that there were clear rules, there were clear that all these companies, all they had to do is come in and register with him. It was the furthest thing from the truth. A, we don't have clarity, and B, they couldn't just come in and register because there wasn't even a clear path for that. And we've seen, massive issues in this country in terms of development within the crypto space. And so, but we're seeing it all over the world. We're seeing things change rapidly elsewhere. So, number 6, I refuse to believe that Attorney Gruel announcing he's leaving the SEC the same day the appeal is filed is just by chance. I like that. I mean, it's there's a high probability that he's done. That's it. It's like, okay, you want to file, he left. There's no such thing as coincidence. Things he knew what was happening. Did he announce it way before the thought process of an appeal that he was leaving on this day, or was it a sudden departure? That would be, the coincidence of it, and say, well, there's obviously a reason he's leaving. So the only hope of all this being over soon is if there's new leadership at the SEC. If Trump becomes president again, I will humbly accept that role of director of enforcement and refocus the agency on protecting you from scams, frauds. And there you go. So we have the first candidate for the SEC putting it out there, and let's see if Trump will jump in and say, okay, hey, you know what, Jeremy Hogan, you've done a phenomenal job. Love some of the commentary. Love the things you're saying. Let's get you on board as the chair of the. But he doesn't want to be the chair of the SEC. Wait a minute. He wants to be director of enforcement. and but I guess that director of enforcement. Do you want to be the chair of the SEC, or do you want to be that's interesting. So, all right, got to get rid of all these refocus the agency on protecting you from scams, frauds, and thieves. There you go. We need to enforce the SEC. I think that's part of the problem. Is that who checks the SEC? Who's overseeing Chair Gensler? Or does he just operate on his own? Does he report to anybody? I mean, that's a big question. Is he supposed to report directly back to the Financial Services Committee? Does he report back to the Banking Committee? Like, where exactly does he fit? Does he answer to the Senate? Does he answer to the House? Does he answer directly to the president through a chain of command? Like, how exactly is the SEC directed? And for someone out there to say, hey, you're doing a bad job, you need to course correct, or does he just get to operate any way he wants to operate and pretend that he can write law, which is basically what Gary Gensler has been doing, is pretending that the SEC isn't there to enforce laws, but actually there to write new laws. Also funny that for a number of years, Congress has pointed to Gary Gensler and said, you need to figure this out. Gary Gensler said a number of years ago, pushed it back to Congress and said, if you want to figure it out, you guys need to pass the law. You need to pass the right bills. Then it gets tied up. And obviously there was a game being played because Gary knew that the bills wouldn't get passed, meaning that the power was back in his pocket. So, and he holds the card. And so that has been obviously devastating up until this point within the industry, within the space, etc. So Jim D is saying SEC acts as if it has superior authority than exactly. That's the problem. He believes that he operates, and he's an unelected bureaucrat. But I believe there's a lot of unelected bureaucrats that work in DC that see administrations come and go. Imagine you work there for 20, 25 years, 30 years. You're working in government. Think about the different administrations that have come through, and you look and you're like, well, our department, we run everything. We make our own decisions. We don't have to answer to anybody. And there you go. And that's part of the problem, right? It's crazy. It's really, really crazy. Roland, who are you referencing? Tony M. Is there any comment? I don't see anything here. I see Charlie M. Who's he calling out? Who is Roland calling out that is Tony M? I don't understand who he's calling out. I don't see any Tony M. Who's Tony? Are we talking about someone else? I don't understand. Is there any Tony in the conversation that Roland is having some sort of a conversation with? Let's see. We've got Roland said, my friend's in Alberta, the real heartland, and he's from California. California? Is that where you're from? You up in Canada? Where exactly are you? Matt was saying that up in North Carolina, there's no reporting of North Carolina in Australia. What's crazy is even trying to get any of the reporting here was next to impossible. The other night, it was actually last Sunday, we sat, was it Sunday or Monday? Might have been Monday. It was, well, whatever day it was. Oh, it was Monday. So on Monday, we were watching all of the different feeds, and you had to drill down through YouTube to find feeds of what was going on. I wanted to see stuff that was happening in Florida because there was almost no reports on what happened on the west coast of Florida, let alone the flooding that was taking place up in North Carolina. And we know that there was devastating, impact on the northern bend of Florida. There lots of flooding going up the coast, flooding into Tampa area, Siesta Key area. Naples got hit a little bit, but as it went up the coast and then as it went into the bend area, lots of flooding and devastation there too. But you couldn't see any of it. It was like it just like the whole hurricane went through, almost no reporting of it. And then you're right, as it went up into North Carolina until now, because there's all these major issues of getting help to the people, but there's almost no reporting of that either. And it just kind of went through, and we saw nothing. I mean, it was really, really crazy. It's unbelievable how, yeah, all the reporting is on X. XRP Plumbing said you can find a bunch of it on TikTok. I mean, I, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, I'm reading back up through the comments. So I was at the bottom of the comments, and then I was going back up the comments. But yeah, what is up, Caroline? Good to see you here. Trying to see Jim D. I think he's plugged into the wrong YouTube stream. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't, yeah, but that's okay. Having his own conversation there. XRP here says controlled media, but they'll tell you all kinds of stuff about what Iran is doing in Israel. I just don't get it. I want to see stuff that's happening here. I also want to see stuff that's going on internationally. I could figure that out. Uh, even when it goes internationally, they only give you like a snippet of it, and they don't give you. It's hard to figure out the whole story unless you're already educated on the space and understand. Then you have to dive into YouTube, dissect different videos, and go through, figure it out. But here, we saw nothing. There was just like, how do we have this massive hurricane that's a Category 4 that floods, up through the coast, mudslides and major floods with houses floating down the river up in North Carolina area, and there's almost nothing reported on it. It's raining right now. It's pouring rain right now. But it says here, flooding. Florida is facing Florida. Florida is facing flooding number 2 the next week, with the Gulf instability coming across Florida from the West Gulf side. Yep, exactly. There's all sorts of stuff going on here. There's Tony. Tony, I didn't even see you, commenting anything. I don't even know what the whole conversation is. Maybe you guys can figure it out in the chat. I haven't seen everything in the chat, but anyhow, it doesn't make any sense to me. So, all right, where was I here? All right, we've got, let's see. Oh, here we go. All right, let us get into, let me share this one here. All right. So this was posted on Uphold. So I believe this is Uphold with a gold mark here. The rule of law have already prevailed. Here's your XRP report of the week. SEC appeals ruling in Ripple case. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse let his feelings be known after the SEC appealed the court's ruling that XRP isn't a security. They lost on everything that matters. Ripple, the crypto industry, and the rule of law have already prevailed. Ripple's chief legal officer called the appeal a complete embarrassment for the SEC. What do you think? Will the SEC ever give up? Obviously, we just talked about the Jeremy Hogan And then you have the Ripple stablecoin that's coming out weeks, not months. Ripple is gearing up to launch the Ripple stablecoin, a compliance first stablecoin, bridging traditional finance with crypto. What is going on with that? Are we going to see, you know, how is this all going to balance out? That's what I would like to know. It's well, we'll soon to see now that they launch a stable coin. How does that impact everything else? I just don't get it. Don't get this part of it. This is something we're going to workshop for a while. So Ripple obviously in the know, Ripple launching the stable coin. We've analyzed the fact that with the stable coin, do they really need um, the XRP asset? They're still going to be able to utilize the XRPL with or without XRP. The stablecoin brings in a new dynamic for Ripple as a company to kind of move beyond. Maybe they, as they anticipate the needs of big financial institutions and moving big financial institutions away from direct engagement with cryptocurrency, wanting to engage with blockchain, wanting to engage with technology, but not wanting to have exposure to volatility. Unlike, let's say, a MicroStrategy, and with MicroStrategy investing lots and lots in Bitcoin, knowing that there's exposure to volatility with the expectation of volatility on the positive side. So obviously you have a company like that, but can a bank or a financial institution expose themselves to the volatility of a digital asset when they're moving money? Or if it's geared up in terms of whether you're sitting in a let's say you're looking for stability. You want to be able to move $1 million. You want that $1 million to still be $1 million, whether or not it's sitting for a month or sitting for 6 months. You don't want there to be volatility in that $1 million. So that's where the stable coin becomes very instrumental. But if it's in terms of exposure to investment from an investment vehicle perspective, totally separate, because there's volatility and risk in stock, as there will be volatility and risk in digital asset. Digital asset is much more highly speculative than a stock would be, although we see manipulation within the stock market by the industry, because by the time retail gets into the stock, you're typically on the back end of it. The bigger institutions are making tons and tons of money, and you're making a little bit less. But obviously, if you can time the market, if you can hold, if you can buy and hold, obviously there's day traders out there making decent moves. But in terms of, let's say, like a Jim Cramer, by the time he's talking about a stock, it's typically already overinflated and too late. But they're now pushing it into the hands of retail that aren't educated on the space. Maybe they don't know what's going on within the stock, so they're relying on him. Then they're buying in, as the bag holders. So it's just, can that happen, within the crypto space? And we're talking about volatility and exposure to volatility. But I think that's, again, the point with the stable coin has to do with financial institution moving money and making sure there's stability within money. So that's it. Now the question here is, what else are they forecasting? Are they forecasting anything else? Because regardless of what the SEC says about the XRP asset, how Ripple was working with the XRP asset, now they're moving and transitioning from a business infrastructure perspective, moving over to the stable coin. I still think, and Chip and I can workshop this even more over the next weeks, and as the RLUSD stablecoin is launched further, what kind of an impact is that going to have on the XRPL as a whole, as it's flowing through, and as we know, also utilizing Ethereum. So it's going to be interesting. It's an interesting dynamic of everything that we're seeing. This space doesn't cease to amaze you because it's constantly progressing. It's constantly developing, which is interesting. All right, what is Chip saying over here? The appeal has fuck all to do with the fact that XRP having legal clarity, but you couldn't know that listening to the so-called XRP influencers who care if Ripple is finning the SEC. Who cares? Just going back up the opposite way, Chip. The appeal is a joke. The SEC doesn't know when to cut their losses. Complete waste of a complete waste overall. You guys got a hold of it there. So, all right, here you go. And Legendary, they are printing the hell out of the RLUSD. So if they already have 800,000 tokens minted and they're going to keep printing more, we have to be assured that it's also backed. Is it backed dollar for dollar? Is it backed with other commodity? Is it backed with digital asset? Are they going to balance the digital asset? Are they backing it with XRP? What exactly is going into the treasury that's going to back up the RLUSD? We need to get, a lot of clarity on that so then we know specifically, what's going on. Andy was saying RUSD will probably be announced at Swell. Yeah, we haven't really talked about that part of it, but there's a good chance maybe they'll give they're definitely going to focus in on and talk about the RLUSD at Swell that's coming up here actually in about a week. And of all the people that got oh no, Chip, you didn't get an invite. You weren't invited. Sorry. No invites for people that actually could benefit from being at Swell. So it's makes no sense. That would have been great to be there. Great to experience it. So it's another good question. And obviously that'll be announced. Is it going to be a private institution banking only, or is it going to go to retail? Are they trying to offset what's going on with USDT, USDC, as well as PayPal? And I believe the SHIB from the Shibarium, they're getting ready to put together a stable coin of their own. There's going to be all sorts of stable coins pouring in at some point. And so some of them will be backed and some might have issue. There was obviously in the early days, there were issues with Tether. And so it's interesting to that point. Let me just go straight to that article. Actually, before we get there, let me go into this this nice X post here from Bill Morgan. I like this one. So it's in reference to the appeal also. And I like this. So Bill Morgan, the SEC and Ripple can and always could have settled the lawsuit at any time. They are too far apart, which is what we were talking about earlier on. We talked earlier about how far apart, why there could never have been a settlement. And to boot, Bill points out, the SEC hates crypto. So it hasn't and won't happen. There's just no path to a settlement, not with Gary Gensler, not with the initiatives that have been put in place by the existing SEC. There's no way. The two aren't coming together. And if you can't bring them together, there's zero settlement. They're too far away. And I agree with that. I like that commentary. And I'm glad you shared your thoughts on that. We're able to post it and share it. And so let's see. Here's another one as we kind of take a sidestep. But when we look at three-letter agencies, whether it's the SEC in this country or the IMF somewhere out there in the international domain. And so I want to pull this video up. And Chip, thanks for sharing this. Because I think we really need to get a clear understanding of some of the things that these big organizations are doing. And if you think again, the mission of the IMF is to help developing nations in times of need, but they manipulate their power in order to oppress many of the developing nations to keep them in a developing status versus actually helping them move towards growth, if that makes sense. So let me just share this, from Chip. The IMF, we're just a useless shakedown organization. Ni bokele, hold my beer. So here, this is the official IMF press conference. What do they want to do at this press conference? They want El Salvador to limit the public sector exposure to Bitcoin. So let's take a look at this. Make sure the volume is up. Here we go.
So on El Salvador, IMF staff have an ongoing engagement with the Salvadorian authorities, and the objective is to reach agreement on a new IMF-supported program that would help with the macroeconomic stabilization and adjustment, and also growth-enhancing reforms. Ongoing discussions are focused on policies to strengthen reforms that can be used to boost productivity and economic governance. Addressing risks arising from Bitcoin is a key element of these discussions. And of course, the goal is for the fund to be in a position to support a credible and well-sequenced policy package that is designed by the authorities. With respect to the details on Bitcoin, what we have recommended is a narrowing of the scope of the Bitcoin law, strengthening the regulatory framework and oversight of the Bitcoin ecosystem, and limiting the public sector exposure to Bitcoin.
So, they hyper focus on it. They say a lot of nothing, but then they get into what their agenda is. Think about what we've talked about a lot within crypto, what it means for the people, bringing the power back into the hands of the people, where these big institutions, the IMF, which manipulates billions and billions of dollars, and manipulating individual liberty, manipulating countries, passing bad policy, making sure that a country adheres to the policy that the IMF prefers, always in a handout mode. And then there's always going to be countries in also a handout for receiving mode. But that's what the IMF wants. They would love nothing more than to dictate and control the people at their whim. And so what Bitcoin represents, and when they talk about the Bitcoin ecosystem, it goes beyond just Bitcoin. It's really the crypto space at large. And I believe that the terminology of Bitcoin becomes synonymous with crypto at large. And so we talk about the Bitcoin ecosystem, and the IMF objective is to limit Bitcoin exposure to the hands of retail. Now, if they want to limit that, what they're saying is we want to strip the power from the hands of the people. The people are experiencing a little taste of what that freedom means, a little taste of what it means to have financial freedom without impact from all these major institutions. To have at least some sort of a path to for self fulfillment, but they want to strip people of that. Obviously, the development of the space, it's still in its toddler phase, still has a long way to go. But there's been so much discussion over being able to bank the unbanked. Now, there's obviously, you can use the terminology. You can look at the means of being able to get these individuals that are claimed to be unbanked, and there's millions of them all over the world. Why? Because it's extremely difficult. In many countries, banks aren't prevalent. Banks don't have easy online access all over the world like they do in the US. And so it just makes it extremely difficult when you have to go to a bank branch that might be, maybe there isn't a bank branch that's easily accessible in your town. And I always think about, I look at the coffee bean and how the coffee bean is growing up, and how the wholesalers, they're the ones that are making the huge markups. The farmers farm the bean. Their only way of selling is to the wholesaler that comes in and identifies, and they don't have any other path to try to market. Uh, and maybe they're getting paid in cash, and so they're living in, season to season. And many cases, from a seasonal perspective, when you're not in growing season, then some of the family go to other countries to work, to send money back to help support the families. Uh, and that's on these. You have a lot of these smaller coffee bean farms. Now imagine if the dynamic shifts, and with a mobile phone, they're able to set up a digital asset account. They can, start marketing their product. They can do it through, whether it's some form of a website, or maybe they're able to do it on a Shopify, or all these different variables, but step by step. It allows them access to growth and expansion, and really more self-fulfillment. They're not 100% reliant on the system. And from an agrarian uh, starting point, as they move up and develop these farms, instead of having big corporation or bigger entities come in and and either buy up their land, buy up their farming. It gives people, so much more capability and potential to grow. And so the IMF represents kind of this nullification of growth, nullification of advancement, kind of like the United Nations, the same thing. They're always in this handout mode because there's billions and billions and billions of dollars that are involved in all of these organizations in terms of earnings, and corruption, and all of these other things that go around on a global scale, that the individual liberty gets stepped on as a direct result. And that's what all of this stuff ends up being intertwined. So when you see someone like this, speaking at the IMF, and they want to limit the exposure of people to a digital asset, then that's what it's about. It's about stripping people of their freedom. I mean, I look at the Constitution, and this is in the US. We have certain constitutional rights, and we see the power players that are every day trying to strip the people of their rights. And there are certain rights that people around the world should have, and one of those is to take care of their family and earn money and advance and develop, and not have entities like the United Nations or the IMF constantly squeezing and making sure that these people remain oppressed. That's one part of it. But in this country, you could see where it begins as they try to regulate things, like, take into consideration the Second Amendment, which is spelled out very, very clearly. And it ends with "shall not be infringed." It doesn't say there's wiggle room. It doesn't say that you can have a difference of opinion. It just says "shall not be infringed." People have the right to bear arms. You can't step on that right. That's it. It's very clear, right? And under the Second Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that's the most important, because it represents defending and protecting the First Amendment. And again, this is in the US, and the First Amendment is very clear also. But you see a government that's currently in power right now, and you have candidates with Harris and Klutz over there, and these guys represent the undoing of the Constitution, because they want to take away certain basic rights. And like, so you have the First Amendment for those that haven't read the Constitution in a while or outside the US. The First Amendment's also very clear. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And so you have this right, and yet they're trying to rewrite these rights, and it happens on a regular basis, And so, all right, let's move through this. And you'll see that a lot of what we say, we're on the right side of history. And then you have, the people that are on the opposite side of history that are trying to take away and kind of demean everything that is important. So let's pull this up. Now you have a candidate that can only speak when connected to a teleprompter. Obviously, we've had multiples of those, but this one here, having a complete meltdown because she can't iterate her policy position, supposedly giving these presentations and speeches all over the place, but hasn't grasped kind of the basics. So let's put this up real quick. She gets stuck. Apparently, the teleprompter stopped working.
Remember his number? 32. Today we got 32 days until the election. So 32 days. 32 days. Okay, we got some business to do. All right. 32 days. And we know we will do it. And this is going to be a very tight race until the very end. This is going to be a very tight race until the very end. We are the underdog, and we know we have some hard work ahead.
32 days. Oh my God. It's such a joke. I don't know who these people are that are getting behind and supporting this nonsense. I mean, you see it, you can watch the whole thing. Obviously, they just cut out a little piece of it, but you listen to the way it's spoken, the things that she said. It's just, oh my God, it's too much. It is too much. So Frady Cat said, this is what happens when you have a dumbed down population. That's exactly what they want. They want to dummy down and they've done that for years, right? So if you think about the education system, they've dummied down the education system. They no longer teach the Constitution. There's no respect for the flag. There's no respect for the country. They've created an environment of chaos, because when you have chaos, you can have tyranny. Chaos allows you to control the population. Chaos makes it less secure for the individual. So you attack financial stability, you attack people from a health perspective, you attack safety and security, and you can easily then control. The population, and we saw that very clear when over the year of COVID, where they were so easily able to manipulate people. It was scary how easy it was to manipulate people, to the point where they forced them to get a certain type of injection, whether it was proven, not proven, good, bad, indifferent, lied to the population, lied to the public. And people in mass were willing to attack other individuals within the community at the behest of their political overlords. They took medical knowledge and threw it under the bus. It all became politics, and the foot soldiers out there were willing to do anything again for their political overlord. It just it's amazing to me that that was the case. It amazes to me that there's still some, some people out there that are willing to support, all of this. It just and it's going to change because the pendulum, that pendulum's constantly swinging. The thing is that for too long they pull the pendulum over to the left, artificially pulling it to the left. 100%. The pendulum always swings right of center because that's where the majority of the population, right of center is where it has to be. Right of center is where it's going to come back to. Right now, they artificially push it to the left. Every Marxist regime, every communist regime, they push everything to the left, full government control, and we got to come back a little bit right of center, and embrace what's needed to get there. So it's coming. It definitely is coming. People don't like the corruption. They don't like the fact. They know that elections are being corrupted. They don't believe that you have a candidate. How do you put up a candidate that received 0% of any primary vote? 0%. So she did not win a primary. She was positioned in this to run. She didn't go through the normal process. The whole thing is insane. The whole thing is absolutely insane. And and Chip 100% is 100% right. The whole point of Warp Speed wasn't about putting an injection in every single person's arm. It was a matter of knowing that the leftist controlled political regime wouldn't allow the release of a lockdown if it wasn't for having a salvation in their mind, right? That fast salvation, because all those other things that Trump did promote, like you're saying, ivermectin, HCQ, all these things that were out there that could help people. When you have, like, was it 99% of the population, if you got sick, you were fine. It was a small percentage that didn't, and then those that went into the hospital, that went on ventilators, typically died. But it was a smaller. The percentages kept breaking down. What was glaringly obvious was in New York and California when they sent people that were sick into nursing homes, and people died. And there were people that were high at risk that were treated improperly. And if things were handled differently, but you saw the worst of humanity. You saw the Marxist ideology at its best, where they believe in government and media, because as a propaganda machine, ramped itself up to its highest level to dispel any contrary opinion or contrary discussion. Having a true public discourse on the health aspect of it, on the medical aspect of it. And they silenced medical doctors and researchers that had a contrary opinion because they had direct impact and result with their patients on how to help them with COVID that didn't involve any of this nonsense that the left would have had you believe. And you saw what happened in Canada, and you saw it happen all over the world as they forced shutdowns. Florida, we were shut down for like 4 weeks, and then everything pretty much went to 25%, then 50%, then it was 100% open. Yep, within a short period of time. States like Michigan, their restaurants were out. The restaurants were out for like a year. They wouldn't allow people in the restaurants for a year. I said, how do these restaurants stay open? They did carry out, but for a year they couldn't go into a restaurant. It's like chaos, right? It's insane. The left thinks they can cheat again. It's not going to happen. They're going to try. They can't do it again. It just it's insane. If you see the sheer number of people that have left the Democrat Party in droves, then you have people like Liz Cheney, and Romney. And all these, they're self-serving. They're in it for themselves. They don't care about anything. They, we talk about Gary Gensler with his vendetta against crypto. They just have a vendetta against Trump. They're never Trumpers. They don't care about the outcome of the country. That's exactly what, they're just there to manipulate. And, it's all a personal vendetta. And it's disgusting when you see stuff like that versus people that are leaving the Democrat Party because they're waking up and realizing that they've been brainwashed and lied to their entire existence, that there is more to it than what they've been told. And, and that's the point, right? So, all right. Well, we're at an hour here. The time flies by when we start, talking about this stuff. It's just crazy, but just a few more points on what we were referencing. And so I think this is kind of important. Let's put this up. Why? Because this was 3 months ago. Here we go.
FEMA is tremendously prepared. This is what we do. This is what they do. And the key here, Rebecca, is also to make sure that the communities who are potentially impacted are prepared as well. And it's not just hurricanes and wildfires, also extreme heat, which certainly some parts of the United States are already experiencing.
Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is sounding the alarm on FEMA funding right after the devastation of Hurricane Helene. Listen.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
This all comes as the Biden-Harris administration spent over
Well, there you have it. I mean, what in the world? 3 months ago, everything's fine. All of a sudden, not so fine. But you know where all the money went? It went down south of the border, or south to the border, up, and that's exactly where the money ended up. So they decided that they're going to help illegals before they actually help actual American citizens, and that's happening on a global scale. We're seeing stuff that's going on all over the world. I see how they're helping, these illegal immigrants in countries before they're helping their own people. And that's where the public is waking up to it, right? So here you had this commentary here. I like Cat Turd put this up. Pete Buttigieg said no one is shutting down the airspace and FAA doesn't block legitimate rescue and recovery flights. If you're encountering a problem, give me a call. Elon Musk said there's hundreds of reports of FEMA, FAA blocking flights. This literally just happened. I will follow you. Please DM me the number to call. Elon Musk. So, that it's you look at the timing of it, right? Still waiting. The helicopter is trying to land to deliver critical supplies. What's the number to call, right? And there you go. Direct. Elon Musk has put time, effort, and money on the line to actually represent the freedom of this country and bringing the power back to the hands of the people. And I like this post too. It's very clear. We've reached kind of like that poem, right? The two, two paths diverge. What is it? I think it's two paths diverge in the yellow woods. Something, I forget the poem, but anyhow, so you have this split, and here are two roads, whatever. So here you have very clear, right? It's a very clear objective. You have the America first, America last. What direction do you want to go in? Elon Musk has chosen exactly which way he wants to go. Elon Musk wants to go to the right because we want to represent America. We want to make sure that from a U.S. perspective, and if you're in England or you're in France or you're in Italy or you're whatever country you're in, why not put your country before all the illegals that are coming into your country? Why are they more important than your own citizenry? Why shouldn't France be important to to the French? Why shouldn't the people, the citizens of France, be more important? Why shouldn't the citizens of Italy be more important than any of the illegals that they're bringing in the country? It makes no sense, right? And so if you're going to build and you have to represent your people, why is it that we're giving thousands of dollars to illegals coming in this country that can't even represent our country? It's so devastating. It's so devastating in terms of what's happening over here. Well, all right. What else do we have going on here? So here you go. Because the illegals are more integral in regard to controlled demolition. It's a good point. Yep. And this is on a global level, and it's, we've had enough on a global level. So there you go. Hated for exposing the truth, heading for letting the truth be told. Another good one. And people are putting these memes together so succinctly. Really great. Anyhow, it's a lot of content here. It's a lot of good content. So let's see. Do we have another one? Let's see. We had John Bolton. Go back to Coinbase. I think that covers everything for the day, other than the Coinbase is pulling Tether USDT out of Europe. That might be an interesting cap for the discussion, even though it go back into this. But I saw this pop up, and this was interesting. But Coinbase is going to delist USDT and other non-compliant stablecoins because this is what they're preparing for. Coinbase is going to remove stablecoins that don't meet the EU's new MiCA regulation by December 30th. You see stuff like that happening, and then you wonder if Ripple was in the know releasing their stablecoin. Does that create some sort of an offset? What exactly happens with this? Is it a major, does it have a major impact? I think it was Jim or someone earlier was talking about the whether or not the Ripple stablecoin is going to be retail or strictly institutional. That time will tell. But if we're seeing a delisting of USDT, how does that impact everybody? Does that have a major impact on anybody holding USDT? What do they need to do to become compliant to MiCA and the MiCA regulations over in Europe? So that's something that we also have to follow. We definitely have to follow that. That's could be interesting too. All right. What else do we got here? What else should we get into? I think that's what we've got. I think that is everything we've got. Any commentary here? Big shout out to Rough Rican. Appreciate your support. Appreciate you being here. So thank you very much for that. Thank you guys for joining us today as well. Oh, there we go. Think of the market cap for a USDT. It has to go somewhere. And are they preparing? Maybe they are preparing for it. And if that, where's the market cap going to go? That's a great point. Does it go over to USDC, or does it go to, is it going to go to PayPal, or does it go to a Ripple stablecoin? That's a really solid point, something that we have to watch, monitor, and take a look at, because maybe they position themselves well for that. But if they did, that doesn't really have an impact. Again, doesn't impact the digital asset space per se. Doesn't impact XRP per se. But it's kind of that change in course, that course correction that Ripple as a company has been going through. Their stablecoin might pay off really well for them. If you're a shareholder for Ripple, or planning on being a shareholder for Ripple, maybe that'll have an impact on your holdings. Don't see how that impacts the digital asset space, other than having a stable coin that is then backed by a more legitimate corporation, and having very clear rules, defined rules from a regulatory perspective on what is permissible, even from a stable coin. So now you have the big players in it, and the original players might end up disappearing. Maybe you have a PayPal that sat on the sidelines. Ripple obviously been around from the beginning, but from a compliance regulatory perspective, size of company perspective, moving into stablecoin maybe different than a Tether. Then you have USDC. So it's going to be interesting as we see this power struggle for position on who is going to become the predominant player for stablecoin, and in which industry. Is one going to be more predominant for retail, because PayPal is already set up for retail. Ripple is not set up for retail. That's another point. I mean, you get it out to crypto retail, maybe you get onto the exchanges. Are people going to use it? Is it going to be well known? Are people still going to use USDC or Tether? In Europe, obviously, unless they become compliant. PayPal even made an impact in this space yet, but PayPal has its own payment rail in terms of its platform. And so does it then attract more of its own platform into crypto? How's that even going? Is PayPal actually developing its crypto space? It's kind of a yes, we have it position. How are they doing with that? Are people going there to buy and hold crypto on PayPal, or is it a non-starter? Is that a business center that's going to maybe grow, maybe not grow for them? And then the same thing with Ripple. Are they able to transition into a retail type environment, and are people going to use it? Is it going to be a known entity, a variable on the exchanges, or is it going to be strictly institutional? This is the growth of the industry and things that we're going to follow and workshop further. So great for everyone to join us here on a Saturday. It was great seeing everybody, seeing your commentary, and that is the point, right? We want to all come together here, be able to workshop, be able to have some discourse, and then move on. So, all right, we'll be back tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here, Chip and I on the chain. Look forward to seeing you guys then. And if you haven't done so already, go check out two things that you guys need to check out. One is go to onthechain.io. The reason why you go to onthechain.io is because when you go to onthechain.io, first of all, that's our website. But second of all, you can subscribe. If you subscribe, every time we finish posting, we do have this in a audio podcast format. You can easily go into our recent shows and say, hey, you know what? I want to look at one of these recent shows. I missed the show. I want to go in. I want to listen to it. Well, you can hear the podcast, easily rewatch it, and you can go through and see every article that we had pulled up. We might not have covered all of them, but this is a lot of the things that we took to prepare for the show, and it's there. And when you subscribe, you don't have to pay for it. You can do it for free. If you want to support us through there, you can. We have different ways of supporting the channel, or you can just subscribe and make sure you get these awesome emails. And then the last thing that you guys might want to check out, if you haven't done so already, is the Badass YETIS coffee, right? Why? Because it's badass. It's badass and it's great coffee. So highly recommend there. There you go. There's a link, badassyetiscoffee.com. And come on, look at that. Look how amazing this badass coffee is, right? It's Badass YETIS. There's a couple different versions of it. My favorite, these are my two favorites, Obsidian Bold, Noir Symphony, because I like that dark roast. Check out one of those. Get one of those dark roasts. If you're more of a medium to dark roast, you can't handle the real stuff, then go get the Mountain Mist. Also really good. And if you want something light, kind of a breakfasty blend, then that's it right here. These are freshly roasted when you order them. So go on here. You can order it directly through badassyetiscoffee.com. You order it there. The order goes in, it gets roasted, packaged up, and shipped to you right away. So highly recommend it. And that helps support us here on the chain. So with that, you guys are awesome. And we will check you guys out on the next one. I am out of here. See if we can get out of here. Let's see if we can find and get out the way we want to get out. Here we go.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.